Now, we cannot talk about minerals, money, and power in Africa without talking about the Lobito Corridor Project. What is the Lobito Corridor Project, you'll ask? Okay, I got you. Now, to give you a little backstory so that you can understand what the project is and its impacts in Africa and African economies, we'll have to go back to try and understand the relationship that Africa has had with different European countries. Now, over the recent years, if you've been keen to note, you'll see that the presence of most Western powers or country in Africa has been largely increasing, with most Western powers engaging in funding projects in Africa, or even some like China giving out loans to African economies, construction of roads in different countries across Africa. That is what we've witnessed with Western powers and their impact in Africa. Now, back to our topic, the Lobito Corridor Project. So, the Lobito Corridor Project is a project by the US government in Africa, and it mainly deals with three major countries, which is Angola, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, this project by the US is meant to facilitate the construction of a massive railway line that runs uh, from Lobito in Angola through Zambia to DRC. This railway line is meant to basically connect the three countries so as to facilitate the transportation of minerals from the mineral-rich economies to the Atlantic port, so that the minerals can be taken to the Western countries for processing and for their use, basically. Yeah. So this is one of the largest infrastructural projects that has been that has been funded by the US government in Africa. And even recently, I think in through, during the end of the Biden leadership, I think in December of 2024, Joe Biden also came to Angola, made a state visit to Angola, and he was actually the first sitting American president to come to Angola. And one of his main reasons for coming to Angola was to inspect that project, because the project has already started. So his main aim was to inspect that project and see what has been done and basically how it's going on. So you would ask, why is this project significant to the United States government? Why will the US be willing to fund a project that is worth over $500 million in Africa? And as we all know, as it is common for most extraction economies, basically the Western economies, they cannot fund such projects without them benefiting more from the project or benefiting directly from the project. So you will ask, why is the US willing to fund so much, to put so much funds to this project, and why is it important? Let me give you the context of that. So the United States is always, for some years, has been having power struggles with China, and the two countries, they are sort of competing as to who will become the economic superpower in the world. And China has is sort of outdoing the Americans when it comes to dominating the consumer market. So China also has a presence in the DRC in terms of mining minerals and exporting them to China and to their country. And the minerals, which most of the minerals which are mined and exported by the Chinese, is usually minerals such as copper, cobalt, lithium, and manganese. And these minerals are very crucial in the production and in the manufacture of mobile phones, laptops, and other technologies that we currently use. So the China has dominated that industry for quite some time, and because of the bad blood, I can say, sort of between the US and China, the US does not want to be dependent on China for these technologies, for the manufacture of these technologies. The US wants to stand on its own, and it also wants to gain some, I can say, it wants to gain a place, or it wants to it wants to sort of become also a superpower in the production of these technologies, mobile phones, laptops, TVs, most of the components used in the production of these things, in the manufacturing and production of these things are contained in the minerals. So the US also wants to dominate the consumer market. And the only way to do that is to make sure that they gain the minerals from the source. And most of the minerals are obtained from Africa, as I said, which is countries such as DRC and Zambia. They are very rich in resources, in mineral resources. So this project is very important to the US government, because through this project, by creating a direct railway line transport that ensures that they can extract minerals directly from the source and transport them to their countries, this sort of gives them an upper hand in the consumer market, because they'll have the minerals, they'll produce their own products, and they'll not have to depend on China for the products. So in short, this project is, I can say, a geopolitical chess move by the US. Sort of, they're just trying to gain an upper hand in the in the production and in the manufacture of this of the technological products, and they want sort of to become the superpower, sort of to say. And the only way that they can do that is by obtaining minerals, unrestricted minerals, like obtaining minerals by freely obtaining minerals from their sources, and also ensuring that China does not become a superpower in the production and processing of technological gadgets and electronic gadgets. Now, you'll ask yourself, what does Africa have to gain from this? Of course, we are the ones who get the breadcrumbs out of all these projects, because there is nothing much that the project does for the three African countries that are involved, that is Angola, DRC, and Zambia. Of course, the US will come and say, oh, we'll do this, we'll promise. They have promised a lot of things. They have promised that the project will improve infrastructure, will improve financial markets, transport, agriculture. But that is just what we get. Those are just breadcrumbs in terms of what the US has to gain from the project. Because in as much as the project will promote transport, in as much as the project will open up the African countries to the outside world in terms of trade, but the US ends up getting the lion's share of everything, because they are the ones who get to obtain minerals from Africa. They are the ones who get to victimize Africans off of their resources. They are the ones who continue to perpetuate the existence of wars in Africa because of these minerals, such as in the case of DRC, whereby we see there is consistent war. There is consistent displacement of people because of the wars, and most of these wars are actually caused by the scramble for these mineral resources. We also see cases of illegal mining. Even China, there are cases whereby they illegally mine the minerals and take them. But as Africans, I don't know who's to blame actually. I don't know if it's the African presidents, because sometimes even there are some cases where you find presidents who stand up to these things and they end up being assassinated. So we are still in a sort of, not even sort of, we are still in a neocolonial era, but such things are things that we as Africans have to wake up and realize. uh, our continent is slowly it's slowly realize that our continent is being disadvantaged through such projects, because we get the shorter end of the stick every time. If you see, okay, if you see the state in Angola, Zambia, and DRC, in as much as they're gaining some infrastructural development, and mind you, this railway, it's not like it's going to transport other things, or it's going to be used for commercial purposes. No, it's specifically meant to transport minerals, specifically, strictly to transport minerals to the Western powers, to the US. So what do we gain from there as Africans? We should ask ourselves that. What do we gain from there? So it's a conflicting issue, because Our presidents mostly just agree to these deals. I don't know if they agree to them without knowing, or they know but they have no option. I don't know, man. So that is it. That is what I wanted to let you know today about the Lobito Corridor project. Um, it's still ongoing. Yeah, it's still ongoing. It's not yet completed, but it started and it's ongoing. And even during the Joe Biden's visit to Angola in December of 2024, he engaged the presidents of the three countries, Angola, DRC, and Zambia, and even Tanzania was involved in that summit. So we still don't know if more African countries are going to be involved and how much these Western countries are willing to take are going to take from Africa. We know they are willing to take a lot. They can even take everything, but we just don't know how much. We just don't know how far they can go. Yeah, but that's it about the Lobito Corridor project. Hope you learned something today.